Daily Detroit is brought to you by the community. Support our work at patreon.com/dailydetroit.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to your Daily Detroit, sharing what to know and where to go in Southeast Michigan. It is Friday, August 23rd, 2024. We're coming to you a little bit later in the day because it's been a journey the last couple days for me. I am Jer Stays, and joining me on the line is
Devon O'Reilly. Good to be here, Jer. Hope things are trending in the right direction for you. I know you've had a lot going on this week, so obviously all of our Daily Detroit team thoughts are with you.
Well, I appreciate it, and thank you, the listeners and members on Patreon and everyone else. Gabrielle has made it out of surgery. She is recovering. She is high as a kite and flopping around like a fish occasionally, but for the most part, just snoring, which is exactly what we need after a pretty major surgery. So she's home finally. It's good to have her back. Now it's going to be 2 weeks of her kind of, getting back into service. So I appreciate everyone's thoughts and prayers and support, and really glad she made it. There's actually 4 hours of surgery. So it's quite the ordeal.
She's home. I'm home. We're doing this remotely. I'm not on the same
You're not on drugs, Devon, are you?
Yeah,
You're not high, are you?
I'm doing this completely sober, as I do almost every podcast.
Well, where have you been? I think we've got a couple of interesting where we've been, because mine is reflected of my journey yesterday, but you went to a couple of places. Let's first talk about your trip.
Yeah, not the usual. I didn't necessarily miss podcast time because we shifted things around last week's schedule, but I was in South Haven with my family over a long weekend. For those not familiar, South Haven is about 45 minutes to an hour south of Grand Haven, a little south of Saugatuck. So you kind of keep going south. It's almost parallel. Essentially, you're taking 94 out to Kalamazoo, then you hop on another on 43 and another 40-minute jaunt. So my wife and I actually got married in South Haven, so we have a little history with the town. It's a classic West Coast Michigan beach town. Really cool. There's just enough of everything. There's restaurants, there's different bars. They lean into the nautical theme in some of the bars, like the Idler Dockside Bar, Captain Lou's. So there's some really cool places. We got a Airbnb, took our daughter out there, and it was lovely. I hadn't had a vacation all year so far, so it was nice to finally get one in.
That is awesome. That is awesome. For somebody coming to South Haven for the first time, what would be your first pick?
It's great for kids. There's tons of parks. There's a really big central park called Kids Corner that has tons of playscape stuff, and it just gets crowded with kids. So it is actually a very kid-friendly beach town. Not that others aren't. They also built a huge new splash pad near the beach. I would say probably go for an Airbnb. There's a couple hotels, but they're going to be pretty small, and I think overall you're probably just better grabbing an Airbnb in the area, because most Airbnbs are probably less than a 15-minute walk into town and also less than a 15-minute walk to the beach. So you're kind of in a perfect spot there. So I would grab an Airbnb, grab it early because they do fill up, and then kind of walk around, and there's shops, there's restaurants, there's bars. Like I said, if you're going for vibes, the Idler Dockside Bar is literally like a barge in the water in the Black River. That's you got to do that. Captain Lou's is kind of like a shanty dockside bar. And then they have other kind of more elevated places like Taste, which is small plates. So they got a little bit of everything. They've got a brewery there. So Harbor Light Brewing. So it basically checks all the Michigan boxes. Although, Jer, as we talk from Michigan, there is a ton of Chicago and Wisconsin element. It's not a given that you're from Michigan when you're in that town. I got a couple people who mentioned specifically, oh, Detroit Tigers hat, great, love the Tigers. You wouldn't get that if you're just walking around because everyone has Tiger stuff on. But there's also a lot of Bear stuff, a lot of Chicago sports stuff, and even some Packers. So when you're over on the West Coast there in Michigan, you're kind of not in enemy territory, but you're not necessarily in your safe harbor of Michigan sports.
That's something I mention to people, too, if they're going to be going to Mackinac Island, because it's 50-50 Chicago, Detroit up there, especially with how much money and influence Chicago has. I saw a lot of that on the west side of the state as well, where Michigan is the place to go. Didn't Oprah have a home over here for a while or something?
Yeah. I mean, you get a ton of Chicago money over here in the places I mentioned between like Saugatuck and Grand Haven and South Haven, because it's so easy. I mean, I think Chicago is probably where we were in South Haven. It's probably as close or maybe a little closer from Chicago there than it was from Detroit area.
Yeah. In fact, even yesterday at the vet, I saw somebody who seemed to be very confused because they had a Detroit Tigers hat and a Chicago Cubs shirt, which I can kind of appreciate because the Cubs are my favorite National League team, but I would never wear them together.
No, I don't think you can do that. I think that's a blatant like red card on sports attire. I think you can do what I would agree is you can do different sports from different cities. You know what I mean? Like if he had a Tigers hat on and he had like a Bulls jersey, different sports. Maybe you're a Bulls fan, you grew up in Chicago, but you're a Tigers fan because you live there now. Like I can give you that, but I can't give you two different cities of the same sport. That's red card, or I'm throwing a flag, whatever sports analogy you want to use.
Yeah, I would love to go to Wrigley Field this year or sometime very soon because I enjoy Wrigley so much, but I don't know. Unless it was a Tigers game, I'm not sure I would. I don't know. I'm very torn on this. I'd love to hear what listeners think on sports attire, especially if you've got split rivalry. Like I know people who are the classic Michigan State University of Michigan household. You know, that whole thing. Like what if you
can't mix up those two. You can't wear those two different. You have either one in your closet.
Right,
I don't care.
I have this vision. I'm going to try to be charitable to this guy. I didn't get a chance to talk to him because it's going to the vet. It's a stressful time. I'm going to be charitable. Maybe he just grabbed whatever like Lucy shirt was in the closet of his spouse of some sort. You know what I mean? Like maybe for the vet, I'm going to be charitable, but out there in the public, I want to hear, do you agree with Devon's rules or do you think it doesn't matter? I think like same sport. Thing is for me, I probably would not mix up two sports attire pieces anyway. Like I'm not the kind of guy who goes head to tail on any individual sport. That's just not really my vibe.
Yeah, got to keep it classy. I mean, unless you're actually going to the game or, you're a young buck and you want to wear straight up jerseys and all sorts of other attire. But
if I remember when you were younger back in the day, I remember you wearing basketball jerseys. Was that your thing?
Yeah, I have tons of them. I have tons of basketball jerseys dating back to the mid-'90s. I still have a lot of them. Some of them are tucked away. Some of them I still break out once in a while if it gets hot enough. But yes, I have an extensive collection of basketball and football jerseys, actually.
Are there any jerseys in there that are spouse vetoed?
Well, the spouse veto is wearing a jersey in general as a 30-something-year-old. That alone is the veto. So.
I appreciate.
I have to save it for times when I'm not with her.
Okay, that is fair. Well, in the time that I had during this whole thing, because it's 4 hours of surgery, the Berkley Animal Clinic is, of course, downtown Berkeley. So I got to know it kind of well for a little bit, go up and down the strip, and you know what? I gotta say, wholly underappreciated. It's got that sweet spot of like being active, but not big enough that you have to pay for parking yet. Although I feel like that's going to change at some point. I poked my head into some shops. I got some great coffee. I even did a dog friendly thing without a dog. I got to say, points to Berkeley. I did not realize that you had what you had. I mean, I talked about the Berkeley treat bar, but I was actually able to spend time and like shop a little and enjoy myself.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know enough about Berkeley, so when you kind of mentioned that this was a place you had gone to, I was interested to talk to you today because I don't know enough about Berkeley, and so you're going to be enlightening me and telling me all the things I need to know. Sometimes I feel like I've been to a place and I don't realize it was in Berkeley, but my first reaction is I don't know if I've been to I've visited an establishment in Berkeley. That's my first reaction, but maybe if I knew better about exactly where it was.
Well, this is not a full review, as I only kind of poked into some places. I knew there were more stores that I, in fact, needed to check out, and I will. But I was able to get some work done at a place called Coffee and Bark, which is, of course, a dog-themed coffee shop, which I'm all about. Good music, great coffee, actually. I had a very good shaken brown sugar oat milk espresso drink. Excellent. Cool vibes. It was pretty quiet because of the day of the week and things like that. But they not only have places to sit, they have a co-working space, an event space, and then in the back, to comply with regulations, if you want to bring your dog, you can go to the Bark Easy. So you bring your dog into the back and you get your drinks from the front, and you can work in the back with your dog.
Nice. I like that. Dog friendly is always helpful.
And then the treat case and the food case, there's like one side that is for humans, and then the other side is for dogs. And of course, I got something that I'm going to give to Miss Gabrielle Rue as soon as she's able to have it. But I actually enjoyed it. There's plenty of space to work. It should be busier for how good it was, to be very honest with you, around the coffee. It should be busier. I really enjoyed it, and it was comfortable. I liked it. Then I also did a little bit of like window shopping. So there's this place called Perch, which is really well merchandised, like stuff for the home. There is this lamp. Okay. Do you like birds at all? Does anyone in your house like birds?
Yeah, I mean, my daughter likes them, and I find myself encountering a lot of them in my backyard.
What about like a 2 foot tall, like a living room lamp, but it's a heron, and like the bird is the bottom, the lampshade's really classy, and then the little head sticks up and over. It was very classy. I liked it a lot.
Okay, Jer.
I was into
I don't
it.
know if I have any place in my house that would fit that motif, but yeah, you do you.
Well, listen, I'm all about buying the weird thing. I didn't buy it yet, but I'm all about buying the weird thing. There's too many vet bills. But there's all kinds of interesting like home goods and rugs and just interesting stuff where it's like very pretty. And I went in there and I was like, all right, look at you doing some interesting shopping. I didn't find the prices to be crazy. There was another wall mount that I really liked, which was a wall mounted peacock with a top hat.
Wow, Jer. Okay, so you're really into birds. Let's be honest.
This is just a theme in the store. There was also a fox with like glasses on. I don't know if you saw my picture that I shared of Lucky Coffee and Royal Oak with the moose with a pipe in its mouth.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So it was same vibe.
Okay,
Same vibe.
Classying up wildlife. Okay, it's definitely a genre.
Yeah. And there's other stuff like home stuff, all the things that you would find in kind of a pretty knick-knack store. So it's definitely worth a stop through. I also went to a used bookstore that they've got down there, which is great. There are a few other stores that I know that I like passed by, didn't go to. And I also grabbed tacos, a little bit of food at Casa Amado, which is right there on Coolidge. So this is like the Coolidge 11-mile, 12-mile kind of zone in there. It's a really funky building. I'll post some pictures up on Instagram of the little thing and in our newsletter. Make sure you're subscribed to the newsletter if you're not already. Go to dailydetroit.com and do that. But yeah, I enjoyed the little walkability of it. There's still more for me to explore. And you know what? Good on you, Oakland County, and that like area in there where you've got a cute little downtown with all kinds of neat little stuff.
Yeah, and as I'm kind of orienting myself here, I'm realizing that I can correct myself live and say that I have been to some establishments in Berkeley, namely Vincetta Garage. I can definitely say that.
Oh, that's right. That's technically in Berkeley, isn't it?
Yeah, because of the Woodward is basically the divider there. So if you've been on the west side of Woodward there, then you've been to Berkeley. So, all right, Jared. Well, certainly a few options for me to check out next time I'm there.
Now, I understand that you had a chance to take a look at one of my favorite places to go to when I was a kid. I thought it had so many cool things happening in your neck of the woods.
Yeah, do you realize that the Henry Ford estate, which is also known as Fairlane, but we won't want to confuse people, so we're not talking about the mall. We're talking about the Henry Ford estate that was called Fairlane. That has been closed now for 11 years while it undergoes extensive restoration. 11 years. I did not realize it had been that long. But I was invited to kind of take a little sneak peek at what they've got going on there, how far along they've come, which they're quite far along on the main floor. They're about 98% done with the main floor restoration, but they're still working on the second floor. Basement, forget about it. And then the garage and pump station, I think, is still underway, and they're doing some extensive renovations there. But it's just absolute meticulous. It was really cool to see this space. Obviously, for those listening, okay, I sometimes take it for granted. So this was Henry Ford's home, built in 1915. That is in, again, Fairlane, we use Fairlane all the time now, but the reason is because this was all his property, that Fairlane area. So where the mall is, where University of Michigan Dearborn is, that's all was the grounds of the Fairlane estate. There's still a sizable estate off the Rouge River that's been there over 100 years now. It's really cool. It was one of the first major homes like that with electricity, its own pumping station. Obviously, Henry Ford had a pretty good connect in the electricity field. His buddy Thomas Edison, who actually maintained a bedroom upstairs. So it was really cool to go inside. And long story short, the renovations that have been going on were to remove kind of years and years of, what were we thinking, Jer? I wasn't there. You weren't there. But in like the 60s, 70s, even into the 80s, people were trying to like update historic structures. You see it in Detroit where they slap like the facades on these beautiful brick buildings. It's like one of those things, I don't know what they were doing in those years where they thought they needed to modernize historic structures. But essentially, the estate inside had been kind of painted over. It had lost the aesthetic. I mean, clearly it still looked very stately, but it had lost some of the details, some of the aesthetic, the furniture that had made it really unique to around 1920 or so, which is when the Fords were really, really using it as their main residence and, raising kids there and everything. So, kudos to the team. They've done an amazing job restoring it, Jer. We were talking, I know you're into historic preservation, restoration, all that stuff. There's so much more wood now that was there already, but it had been painted over. Actually, what I found out was Clara Ford, Henry's wife, she didn't have a great taste for fashion or design. Her and Henry were kind of farm kids, basically. Both of them kind of grew up in very simple kind of farm life. Edsel was really known, his son Edsel was really known for his design aesthetic. And so Edsel and his wife were more instrumental in some of the designs at the time. And so they updated some of the rooms, some of the spaces. But to actually restore it, they were using dental tools on the wood on the walls and the columns. Like, that's how detailed they had to get to remove some of the kind of paint and some of the stuff that had been added.
Wow. Yeah, I have some memories from being younger going through there, and I wonder how that's going to be when eventually that becomes something that to go through. I'm very excited about this.
It was incredible, Jerry. I mean, the history of it just keeps unfolding as you walk through, and like there's a full working organ inside there that kind of like pipes music through the whole house. There's the pool room, which they're going to be using as their main event space. So there was a huge pool in there. They told me there it was the first residence to have an in-ground heated personal pool in the United States, as far as they knew. Now they've kind of like concreted over the pool, so it's just a really nice event space. The pool just wasn't used anymore, obviously, and hadn't been, so it just didn't make sense to keep it as a pool. But there's amazing gardens and grounds that you can walk. You can go there anytime and walk the grounds and take it all in. They're just not allowing any visitors yet. They're hoping maybe early next year to start allowing the public to come in again. But the work that has been done to this to restore it is just incredible, and it will be amazing when you see it. I know if a lot of our listeners have been to the Ford house, it's just very different because it's Ford house is Edsel's house. That's Henry's son, and that looks the vibe, the everything is.
The art modern room, all the stuff like you really see, yeah.
Henry wasn't into all that. You know what I mean? And like, for better or worse, when you go to Edsel's house, yeah, there is this element of forward-looking architecture. It's a little trendier. It's bigger. But Ford's is just very, Henry's is just very stately. It's very kind of its time. More prairie style. It looks, it's just incredible. I'm so glad that I got the opportunity to kind of take a little peek at it. And as I said, I hope that more people will have the opportunity soon to take a look at it. And we'll hopefully be having some more events there and things like that and really activate that space, because the people there have been working so long to restore it to its 1920s glory.
There is another Ford house you can check out. Now, they don't do tours, of course, but it is a long dog walk from my house, and that is the Henry Ford house in Detroit that he lived in when he was just rich, not crazy baller rich. The one near Voigt Park, that is the one he lived in before Fairlane. He moved to Fairlane, I think, 1915.
Yes,
this is
correct.
Before that. This house is absolutely gorgeous. I think it's on Edison. And it's stunning. I mean, it's a stunning thing to look at from the outside. It's a private residence. It has a historic marker, but it is a private residence. But it's interesting to see the progression of Henry Ford when he was, Detroit was the center of everything. And where he was on Edison, that was the outer reaches of Detroit. in a lot of ways back then, but it was also right between downtown where he'd have stuff to do and also, all of his different things living in Detroit, being right there in Boston Edison. It is a gorgeous kind of like squarish kind of place with rounded, tops on the windows at the roof. It's a beautiful place, and it's definitely like well taken care of. The last I remember, don't quote me, it sold for somewhere near $1 million, and it is beautiful. And you got to be rich to live there, okay? But you can see the difference between like rich and then Henry Ford's version of rich, and then you saw Edsel just show out there in the points.
Right. Well, with the help of a dad's money, of course.
Oh, for sure. Not that Edsel didn't have excellent contributions to everything. Like we would not have, for instance, the Diego Rivera mural without Edsel Ford. There's many things we would not have.
Yeah, I mean, we could have a whole section on this, but I think many people would argue that Edsel was the better of the two, in fact, in terms of his forward thinking, the designs he tried to put forth. He was stifled creatively. He was stifled a lot by his father, who was extremely traditional.
Oh, yeah, and in ways that were sometimes terrible. Like I read a story about how when his father was not leading the company for a while, Edsel started to build another building. Then his dad didn't approve of it and then made him walk by the whole of a building for like years. Like just left it there on the site. And I often wonder, too, if Edsel hadn't died early of his stomach issues, what Metro Detroit would look like, because he was the kind of industrialist you see in other cities where it's like they really go out. Whereas like literally Henry Ford caused a minor depression because he wouldn't help things out. Like they had two very different views of their community responsibility and everything else.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, there would have been that whole, if they wouldn't have died young, there would have been a whole period of time, decades, where his father would have passed and he would really be kind of in control of things, and who knows what could have happened. So yeah, like you said, there's a whole show we could do on that, but it is very interesting to juxtapose. I would encourage people when Fairlane opens up officially, go to both in like the same weekend, and you can really kind of compare and contrast the differences in, their lifestyles and who they were as people. Henry, a big teetotaler. Henry and Clara, not social at all. They didn't like to host a lot, so not a lot of hosting spaces. Edsel was, hey, the original man about town.
I feel like you two would have been friends.
Yeah, big man about town, big drinker, as we've known, has been documented. So Edsel was very different than his father in many ways, and so that is reflected in the Ford house. So it's just really cool to have both of these treasures on the west side and on the east side.
Well, Devon O'Reilly, so good to talk to you.
Always a pleasure, Jer.
Absolutely. With that, I'm Jer Stays. Thank you to everyone behind the scenes who makes this thing happen. Thank you to Cheyenne Nocerini for editing our episodes, engineer Randy Walker, Norris Howard, Fletcher Sharp, Luciano Marcone, everybody, our members, patreon.com/Daily Detroit, and to the vets who fixed up Gabby. I'm glad to have her home. This has been it's been a very stressful week, and it's going to be another stressful 2 weeks, but and I thank you all listeners for putting up with missing an episode for that. So
cheers. Yeah. Cheers to that.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, until next week, remember that you are somebody, and we'll see you around Detroit.